Hello, everybody. Welcome to the CT Sports Talent Show. My name is Christopher Saunders. I'm pleased to have on with me Coach Roston, who is the new head coach for Pomperaug. Was previously at a couple other schools prior to the last time I had him on. Coach, I appreciate you coming on. This should be a good conversation.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I always appreciate the opportunity to talk baseball with you.
Thinking about you being at Pomperaug, man, first off, my first question was just I didn't even know if there was a position. I didn't even know the head coaching spot was open for Pomperaug. I had no idea. So being able to see, and this was a couple months ago, I had noticed that you under your profile it said like head coach for Pomperaug, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Didn't even know that. Awesome, congrats. And then we're able to work it through and get you on the podcast. So this should be a good conversation. You and I were just going back and forth as far as the SWC and how deep it is, man. I mean, obviously the Bethels, the Newtowns. I know Massac may be a little bit down, but again, they have so much talent amongst the town itself. A lot of very talented teams in the SWC this year.
100%. It's a very deep league. The history of the SWC is really good. And the competition is just getting better and better, man. Bethel's going to be really good for the next couple of years. Newtown's going to be good this year. Barlow's always on top. So they're, always the top team to beat. Plus New Milford, New Fairfield. It's really no matter where you go,
Mhm.
there's a tough game ahead of you.
And Brookfield too, right? Won't they be pretty good this year?
100%. Yeah, they're going to be good too. They've got a couple of pitchers that are going to cause some trouble, no doubt about it.
Would you say the SWC, and this is no disrespect to hitters, because I'm sure there's a lot of very talented ones in the league, but do you think that there may be a little bit more star power amongst the pitchers this year?
It's possible. We'll see. Pitchers are always a little bit ahead of the hitters, especially at the beginning of the season. It's hard to see those live reps when pitchers are ramping up January, February, and March. So the pitchers are always a little bit more ahead. But I mean, the hitters usually come around once you hit that end of May, end of April, beginning of May. Things
Hmm.
start turning around, and you start seeing those high scores again.
Now, how long have you been a part of, like, when did you get hired at Pompera?
I got hired in January, end of
January.
January.
Okay, so you've had some time to meet the kids, saw who was returning, had conversations with them. I mean, how was that process in the early
Uh,
part?
well, always coming into a new program, there's always some challenges. A lot of kids who got cut from last year came back out again this year. Having the conversation, and we're trying to build something. Pomperaug has a long history of being very successful in baseball, so we're trying to bring that back.
Mm.
The first thing we did when we got in was, I kept as much as the staff as possible. I liked all, the JV coach and the freshman coach. They all did a really nice job last year. We kept Coach Andy Cloutier around. He's been there with the program for 16 years and he's got a state title. He was on staff for that 2010. And then I brought one of the guys from Ridgefield, one of the assistant coaches from JV, JR Supa, who came over. And he's been working with the catchers and the hitters and doing his thing of being the teen boy whisperer and getting into the guys' heads and figuring them out. So, it happened quick, and then we got on them. We did a general meeting with the team shortly after I got hired. We did a grade check in February just to make sure once the whole staff was set to get everybody in front of the boys, so that way everybody knew who the coaching staff was, what the rules and the expectations were moving forward. And then, we got going and we met with the boosters and we got them on board and we're starting to develop that relationship with the little leagues now. So we're trying to really start to build something, again, that Pomperaug High School can be proud of.
So when you met with the boosters, how was the NIL stuff?
Yeah. Well, NIL in Connecticut, high school players are eligible. So,
Oh, I
um,
know.
But not, boosters are boosters. They want to do what's best for the program, and they want to help out their kids and the future of the program. So it's really good that we have a good core
Mhm.
on the Booster Club board, and I'm very excited to work with them for years to come.
You mentioned that 2010 team that won the title. Now, when I was playing Legion ball, I want to say most of the Oakville Legion team, because I had played for Waterbury Senior Legion, because Oakville Junior Legion was disbanded after my first year. So I went to Waterbury. Um, I think most of that Oakville Senior Legion team was Pomperaug kids. It was sprinkled in some Nonawag. It had a couple of Watertown kids on that team too, but it was mainly Pomperaug kids. I remember Brent Palella, or however you say his name, was a pitcher. He was a part of that team. There were some other kids too, and I think the names have obviously changed throughout the years since then. But even so, there's a lot of rich history with Pomperaug.
There is absolutely, and one of my biggest things was getting the alumni more involved. So what we did is we reached out to one of the local alumni, Brian D'Agostino, and he reached out to a bunch of the alumni. We had a bunch of them sign up to do. We do what's called Sunday school, where we bring in an alumnus or somebody from the community or somebody from, the world of sports or business, and they come and talk to the kids for about 30 minutes about new things. So we're starting to develop that relationship with the alumni again, and we're hopefully going to celebrate that 2010 team this year because it'll be the 15th year anniversary.
Nice.
And hopefully during one of the games, we'll be able to celebrate them as well.
Hopefully, you can maybe bring in the Maxim brothers because those two were like, you want to talk about mashers in the middle of the lineup. You want to talk about Soto. Before Soto and Judge, there was the Maxim twins. Those dudes, and I don't know how familiar you are with them, they used to, I don't remember which brother it was. We were playing against Prospect at some field. Can't even tell you where. It felt like it was in the middle of nowhere. I think the ball is still traveling somewhere. It, dude, the sound, now mind you, wood bat, first time using it, never
Yeah,
really heard the crack of a wood bat.
right.
It sounded like 20 trees fell. I'm telling you, we were all just watching the ball. Nobody made a sound in the dugout. We were just like, just kept going, kept going. Feel bad for the pitcher. But
Yeah.
seriously though, it'd be great if you could get them, to be able to come.
Yeah, it's actually funny you mentioned that because Kevin was actually around during pitchers and catchers.
Okay.
So
Nice.
he came around, he taught the boy, did some, he's a strength and conditioning coach. He was in the NFL, he was working with the Jaguars. So he came down during pitchers and catchers week. He went through some weightlifting stuff with the boys, some stretches and things. So we were very lucky and very thankful to have our alumni getting back into, being part of the program.
That's awesome. That's good to hear. That's really great to hear, man. And speaking of guys to be able to have on your side, you've got a great AD with Plasky. Maybe a little biased because obviously I know his times from the Naugatuck days. His son working the CIC coached him back in the day with Naugatuck when I was their pitching coach for their Legion team. But Ron does a fantastic job as far as he's a visionary. He's got ideas. He gets it going. He's forward thinking, and I know in just the short time he's been at Pomperaug, I forgot how many years he's been there. It hasn't been too long, but he's done a lot in terms of within the school and also outside the school too. He's done a fantastic job.
Oh, he's phenomenal to work for. He's a great athletic director. He's very supportive of all the athletes and all the coaches. Anytime we need something, it's, give me a call. He's open to discussion. He's done a great job and he's very supportive of the baseball program and we sincerely appreciate it. And we are.
I would think that that's probably his favorite sport, if not pretty close, I would think.
Yeah, baseball, softball, he's very supportive of everybody. Like I said,
Yeah.
there's definitely no favorites. At the spring coaches meeting, he was very supportive of all of us and, keeping us on track. And, like I said, he's wonderful to work for.
Mhm.
No issue so far. So very happy to be part of the Pomperaug team.
That's good to hear. That's awesome to hear, man. Looking at this Pomperaug team and such, you mentioned how you got a pretty young team for the most part. There's going to be a lot of trial and error, probably trying to figure out you may know who's batting first, but as far as the rest of the lineup could be, you may try a bunch of combinations, right? Kind of like in football where you're trying to figure out the offensive line. You may have 10 different combinations in the first 8 games. In between quarters, you're switching offensive linemen, right? Do you feel like this team could be kind of like that, maybe a little bit better at the end of the year than probably the beginning?
Yeah, well, that with the out of conference schedule in the beginning, it allows you a little bit of wiggle room to kind of test things out and see where you are.
Mhm.
Again, like you said, we're going to be young. We got two guys coming back with varsity experience, and Noah Payne, who's our starting shortstop. He was also all Colonial last year. and Kyle Parker, who's a left fielder, right fielder, pitcher, who also was an All Colonial last year. So, we've got those two guys kind of in the middle, in the core of the group, and then trying to fill in, with guys like our right fielder and pitcher, Brandon Schusler. We've got Franklin Philippone, who's going to be one of our catchers and first baseman. We got Brendan Webke, who's going to be one of our sophomore outfielders. So there's going to be a good core, and of course our second baseman Zach Johnson, who's been showing us some really good things with the stick in the first couple of scrimmages. So there is some light at the end of the tunnel. There things are kind of forming, but we're going to take these 5 out of conference games and really kind of test the waters and see where we're at and see what we're made of.
Who are some of the non-conference games that you have coming up?
So we're opening up with Naugatuck on Tuesday. Then you got Nanawag on Thursday. Then we got out of conference with Barlow on Friday. We've got Seymour, Plainville, and I think that's it for this year.
Geez, so you got
Oh,
Naugatuck,
wait, and Abbott Tech. And we got Abbott Tech too.
and they're not an easy tech team by any means. So the stigma of tech, I think, kind of goes aside for some of the baseball teams. But so you're out of conference. You're testing these kids early. Naugatuck just beat the defending champion in Class M in Woodland, and I know they graduated some kids, but they're still very well coached.
Hmm.
Then you're facing Nanawag, who's only 2 years removed from winning a state championship themselves. They're very good. And the Berkshire League is a if for people who don't know, the Berkshire League's got a lot of baseball talent that nobody talks about because it's the Berkshire League and it's in like that little area that people can't find on a map as far as the league and some of the schools. But you're testing these kids pretty early with some of the out of conference games.
Well, that you can thank Mr. Plasky for. I unfortunately was not hired in time to make many out of conference decisions. However, that's going to be the trend is that moving forward, we are going to test these kids, and we definitely want to add some FCAC in there as well. We want to add, the SCC too,
Mhm.
and try to really test the kids and see where they're at. Because I mean, the whole, people sleep on the state of Connecticut in baseball. These kids play with a chip on their shoulder. They're
Mhm.
used to playing in the cold. It's a different brand of baseball, and some guys can handle it, and some guys can't. And it's really, really something that I hope that more college coaches will be open to. Just taking those Northeast kids because they can play baseball, man.
Is uh is baseball affected, so the question I have is that throughout the travels of the games that I do and conversations with talking with guys like yourself and other coaches throughout the sports years and seasons, I know kids getting poached, getting taken, going prep, doing whatever, I know is a big thing. Basketball, it's huge for many, many reasons. Football, I saw it happen from as soon as the football season ended to even a couple weeks ago. I saw kids who either had graduated or had not graduated and still had a couple years ended up leaving the NVL from their respective schools to go prep. Is baseball dealing with that as well as is it a high, low, medium? Where is that? Where is that?
I think right now it's really at a medium, Chris. What I see a lot, especially from my time at Ridgefield and at Newtown, is guys will take the gap year and they'll go to the Canterbury's and they'll go to the Cheshire Academies and things like that. Kyle Parker, one of our guys this year, is taking a PG year. He's going to go to Cheshire, which he's excited for. So, I mean, I think it's kind of in the middle. I think, you see it more, especially after graduation, if they like the coach and they like the program and they have some success, kids tend to stay. And then they use that gap year to really, either get bigger, stronger, faster, whatever it is, or fix the grades if that's the problem. And I really think, with the current landscape of baseball recruiting, either taking a gap year or going JUCO is going to be a route that you're going to see a lot of more kids take.
Yeah, because it's funny because as we move away from the COVID years of getting that extra year, now in comes obviously the NIL stuff with college. Then you have now the new rule, and I don't know if it's official, but like if the JUCO years don't account towards your college years either. So basically you could play 2 years of JUCO, but then you'll have 4 years of college ball or college whatever. So there's nothing affected with that. Then you've got the transfers. You've got guys who play 7 years of because they were hurt for three of them. And first off, I don't know how these these coaches do it. I give them a lot of credit. But also too, for a coach like yourself who's trying to guide these guys who, if they want to play college ball at the next level, you want to put them in the right position, but then it's also like the money aspect and the away from the family, being close to the family doesn't make sense. Do you want to sit for 2 years? Do you want to sit for 3 years? Like it's a lot going on, man.
No, it definitely is, and like I'm also part of Nanawag Youth Baseball and Softball, so I'm part of the Nanawag Aggies. It's their 13U and up travel baseball program, and just having simple conversations with the guys and the parents is like, the first question you have to ask is it something you really want to do? Do you really want to go to the next level and play? Because it's a whole different ball game. It's not like playing high school ball and playing travel ball for me, where we have two practices a week for travel ball, and then we're playing 2 days plus a tournament. It takes a lot of effort, and there's a lot of things that go on that people don't even realize. There's the weightlifting in the fall. There's the fact that they bring in 45, 50 kids to break down their roster to 35 at the end of it. You got to come in physical, you got to come in ready, and you got to make sure that your grades are up, especially if you want to play Division 1 or 2, because a lot of that money is going to come from academic scholarships. It's not going to come from athletic scholarships, unfortunately. With the D1 saying that you can go to 35 scholarships, that's all good and fine, but a lot of the schools aren't going to be able to have 35 scholarships. It's just not, financially um, it's not financially able. The schools just can't do it, like the mid majors. So you're
Mhm.
going to have to, we tell the kids all the time, you're a student athlete and you're a student, and your grades are going to help you significantly once you get to that next level, because coaches will be able to throw more academic money at you because your grades are higher and your SATs are higher, and then they can hit you up with a little bit of, athletic money to cover the rest.
What's the response when you have those, because I'm sure some of them it's tough conversations. How's that like?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, like me, I'm a teacher, so I'm used to having these tough conversations with kids. Some of them are like, well, maybe I don't. And some of them are like, well, yeah, this is what I want to do. And then, you got to develop the plan, right? So, I mean, the plan is different for each kid, right? It depends on, what type of money you want to spend, how far away you want to go to school, what type of school you want to go to, what do you want to study,
Hmm.
all these things that you have to discuss. And then, like, asking a 15, 16-year-old, sometimes they don't know yet. So
Yeah.
it's like, I try to tell them, look, if you really want to play and you really want to find somewhere to play, you got to do the research and you got to do the legwork yourself. So, that's the first thing I tell them. And then when they come back with, okay, this is what I want to study. This is okay, great. So, you know what you want to study, you know how far, you know what kind of school. Let's pick 10 schools that you absolutely positively have an interest in. And then we set them up and start sending emails and start sending video to head coaches and recruiting coordinators and start the process there.
Mhm.
But it's like, it's a lot. And for some guys, it's a tough conversation in the sense that they think they're better than they are, and you gotta, some people have to, you know, have that reality check of, okay, I'm not going D1 this year, as a, at once I graduate. There are 24, 25, 26-year-old men playing at, in the top five, in the Power Five programs and even the Power Four programs. So, there's a lot of reality checks that need to happen. And I think as more people are educated on what's going on and they figure things out, then
Mhm.
they can have, yeah, a more realistic conversation, not only with their coaches, but also their parents as well.
I mean, you think about too, the SEC has been dominant for baseball at the college level from 2018 on. It's been all SEC as far as the national championships, going back to Vandy, Ole Miss, I think was in 21 or 22, Tennessee last year. And I mean, I don't know who beats Tennessee this year unless something crazy happens because they look honestly better than last year. I thought last year they were fantastic.
Oh,
Um,
they were.
and you mentioned too about the fact of you have these older players who are obviously playing well beyond age 22, 23, 24. You've got now I say power two because I think the Big Ten and the SEC kind of I know different sports. I know the Big 12 with Houston for basketball. playing against Florida, an SEC team. Florida's also very, very good. I know last year for baseball, they were like that bubble team, but they got into the regional because they were Florida and an SEC team.
Yeah, Florida's having a rough year this year.
Are they? I haven't even
Yeah,
really looked. How are they?
yeah.
Are they like not good?
They have a tough time mathematically making the SEC tournament this year.
That's been a
And
while.
just to your point, Texas A&M just swept Tennessee this past week.
Oh,
So
okay. So there you go.
yeah. So there you go. But no, it's definitely hard, and the statistics are behind it. The average age now of an SEC player is 23 years old. It's not 18, 19 anymore. The days of Kumar Rocker and Jack Leiter, starting as pitchers as sophomores is almost, non-existent, unfortunately. But you still have those, mid-major D1s who are still, especially the local guys who are picking up very good talent and,
Mhm.
they're developing, and that's what you kind of want to see, right? You want to be developed and you want to get better.
Do some of either I don't know so much about the Pomperaug kids yet because it's still a little bit early, young in the tooth as far as you being with them. But you mentioned how you were with the Nanawag team as far as the AAU and such, or
Mhm.
being able to do that. Um, with now NIL being such a big thing with college, right? And you were just talking about the SEC and the mid majors. I was talking with a coach a couple days ago, and I made the point that like I equate to like I don't know if you remember Moneyball, but when Brad Pitt, who was playing Billy Bean, said we're playing like we're basically the farm for the upper echelon, the Yankees, the Red Sox. Like the Yankees are taking our hearts, the Red Sox are taking our kidneys, the whole nine, right?
Yep.
And I kind of equate, I hate to say this, but I kind of equate it to the college level where you have the SEC teams taking the hearts of the mid-major, low Division One teams in all sports, taking their best player to then make their program almost unbeatable. And like, do you have those conversations with these kids and the NIL stuff? I know that's a pretty broad question, but does that make
Yeah,
sense?
so like we had an organizational meeting right before pitchers and catchers started with the Aggies, and I kind of broke it down, and like my main point about the NIL is that some of these top five, power five, power four programs, some of this NIL money is life-changing money for these guys. I mean, it's not just covering school, it's covering, helping to cover mortgages back home. It's setting these guys up to have a safety net for when they're done playing. And that's something that, people need to also understand is that, it's a business. Unfortunately, that's what college athletics is becoming with the NIL and with the transfer portal the way it is. But it also helps guys who may have, played, D3 or D2 to make that jump to D1 and get that NIL money. So there's also that positive. So,
Mhm.
there's positives and negatives to the NIL, and there's positives and negatives to the portal. Is it hurting the high school guys at this moment in time? Yeah, and hopefully, you hear about, like the American Baseball Coach Association, they're hoping that they'll put some guardrails up on the transfer portal eventually for the NCAA, and you just have to wait and see. But personally, like having a college quarterback play 7 seasons and not have a degree yet is just absolutely ridiculous.
It is funny when you think about it.
Oh, it is. I mean, listen, like I went to school for like 5 years and I got 3 degrees, man. Like, you should be able to at least get two out of that in the seven.
Well, I saw a video the other day, and I don't know if the coach was talking tongue in cheek here, but I thought he made a good point where if you've got a kid who decides after 1 year being like, all right, I want to go, like we see a lot of kids where they put their name in the portal, they move around a bunch of different places. If they signed, and I don't know the logistics as far as these contracts or what they sign, don't sign, whatever, but if they were promised X amount of money and they leave there should be something like a major league contract when you see in pro sports where if you like Luka Doncic, right? Prime example for basketball. He got traded from the Mavs to the Lakers. He can now not sign that mega deal. He didn't choose to get traded, but still, the point is there was a thing in the contract, or it's in the logistics of the NBA. But you get what I'm saying. So I wonder if maybe, and I don't know if that has anything to do with the portal as far as stopping kids from leaving, But maybe that is something where if you attach money to them leaving or not leaving, maybe that's somewhat of a cure to the portal. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely it's a guardrail, right? You have a signed contract
Yeah.
and you know that then you're staying for at least a year and if you make it a multi-year deal then you got to stay and it's it's like becoming an adult, right? You sign a contract
Mhm.
with a contractor or you sign a contract for your job, you have the stipulations of your employment and you got to work them. Do I think that's good for college athletics? Not necessarily, but I also don't think the NIL is exactly the way it currently is good for college athletics either. But again, that's one man's opinion, and I'm sure I'll get roasted for this in the comments anyway. But I'm a purist when it comes to college athletics.
Coach, I appreciate you coming on. This was fun to be able to talk a little bit about some college stuff, Pomperaug, and everything else. Best of luck as far as what you have going on this season. And maybe our roads will, our paths will cross at some point this season.
Hopefully, Chris, always a pleasure talking with you some baseball, and I appreciate the opportunity to come talk about my boys.
Always, wrap things up here in the CT Sports Talent Show. Next time, stay safe. Remember, CT stands for Connecticut Talent. Enjoy, find them all. Enjoy the day, everybody, and be well.